after the show. So let's talk about pivoting versus purpose today. And as y'all know, stuff just hits me, right? So this hit me over the weekend too, because as I've looked at, good morning, California. Can I send the link to Clubhouse? You know what? It's an app. Okay, so you need to go on the Clubhouse app, go to your iTunes or your Apple, the App Store, or to, I think it's Google, the Google shop. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not an Android person. So go to that
Google,
shop.
yeah.
Google Play or Google something like that. Go look at it, and it's called Clubhouse. Right now, I think the picture is a woman with a little bob haircut. It's a black and white app, black and white picture but of a person, and it's called Clubhouse. So yeah, please do that. Thank you, Leila. So look for Clubhouse, and it's all audio, so you don't even have to be on camera to do it. I love it, and you can follow so many people. It's just really cool. Some really great conversations happen on Clubhouse. So we're going to talk pivot versus purpose, and this happened to me because I am making, I'm just transparent with you guys. I'm actually making some changes in my business as well. And I love what I do. And I love connecting with all of you guys. And I'm going to keep doing that. And there's some other things that I've decided I'm just not going to do anymore. And why? Because physician, heal thyself, dang it. So I'm sitting here trying to push some things, and I got to do it, and I got to do it, and I got to do it. And I just wasn't feeling it, y'all. It was just a chore. And I had to sit down and say, okay, wait a minute. When you are working with people, when you're advising people, when you're helping them work through the kind of things and the decisions they're trying to make, one of the things you tell them is when stuff keeps feeling like it's too much work, you need to pause. You need to evaluate. Is it too much work because it is something new and you got to think about it and you got to learn it, but it's on the path? Or is it too much work because it's really not something that's in your spirit, that's in your purpose? And if the case is the latter, then it's time to make a change. Well, the case for me was the latter. So there's some things that I was doing live that I'm now going to switch to doing on demand. There are some other kind of ancillary things I'm going to be doing that really enable me to support all of you and to continue to do that, and also to dig deeper into supporting students. So stay tuned for some really exciting stuff for students, in particular, those at HBCUs and parents. There's something that I've been, a couple of people who were in a course with me said, oh my God, we need you to do this for our kids. Our graduating seniors, our juniors who are thinking about what they want to do. So I'm marinating on that. So there may be something coming for parents of students in that high school area, high school age range, probably mostly junior, senior, maybe sophomore, probably too early for freshmen, but really kind of that whole idea of kind of where you're going. So I started thinking about all of these things, and I realized as I was talking to people, because things come to you, right? The show came to me, Ethos Practice, Hong is actually the reason that I met Adrian, which is the reason that I met Jerry, which is the reason I got the show, right? So all of these things network. And so what came up while I was looking at what am I going to do? Why is this not feeling well? Because I really, I know I'm in the place I'm supposed to be, but something is just off. So the first thing was, moving some things away from necessarily live, even the Facebook groups. And that's just, no. We're going to get on Clubhouse and we are going to chat, because that's where the power is in the conversation. So we're going to do that. And then really moving into the other stuff that is still in my zone of genius, but also connects to where I really want to continue to give back. And that is in the space of education with students and making an impact, right? I've talked to you guys about really wanting that 7-figure business, not because I want a 7-figure lifestyle, because that's not how I live, but because I want to make a 7-figure impact. And did y'all see that the Gateses are getting divorced? I couldn't believe it. $124 billion. They got to figure out how to split, because they're also, on the West Coast. So we'll see. Anyway, I digress. So talk about a pivot. So, when as I started thinking about all of these things, this word pivot kept coming up. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Laurel, maybe it's time to pivot. Maybe it's time to pivot. And I thought, you know what? I am so tired of that word pivot. Good, pivot, right? Everybody's, the pandemic, we got to pivot. We're all online, we got to pivot. If it's not working, you got to pivot. If we never have that word pivot again, it'll be too soon for me. And what struck me is that it started becoming this thing to do just because. Well, this isn't working and it's pandemic, so I got to change. This isn't working. It's got to, just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And I have to be careful about that too, because sometimes when stuff gets really painful, you just chunk it all and just start all over. And that's not necessarily the right thing to do either. And so what I think the real issue is it time to pivot, or is it that you really need to get clear again on your purpose and decide what action you need to take to move into that purpose? And that may or may not be a quote unquote pivot. It may just be a little tweak. It may be that you really just need to sit where you are, and this is just one of those periods of time where you are just in your 40 years in the desert, right? And you just got to push through because it's going to happen. And I don't mean push, because y'all know how I feel about words. I don't mean push through where you're hurting yourself or you're in danger. But sometimes we need to dig deeper and just say, you know what? It always gets darkest before the dawn. It's always hardest before the breakthrough. All of those kind of things that we know through history and experience to be true. But this idea of having to pivot just because things aren't working the way we want them to work puts undue pressure on perfection. And it gives us a level of impatience that I think is unreasonable. So if it's not working and we started working on something and in 2 minutes it doesn't give us results, then we got to change. If we started working on something and it's been, a couple of days or a couple of months or all of this kind of stuff, then we got to change. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be always evaluating where you are and what you're doing. You should be, especially if you're investing time and money and resources and you're trying to make an impact. You should be paying attention to what is happening, how it's happening, where it's going, all of that kind of stuff. You should be. But do so with a level of calm and a level of clarity that enables you to take action that makes sense and not just throwing everything away because in the moment it doesn't feel right. Or in the moment, it's not giving you the exact results you want. Because here's the other thing. You never know who is watching. You never know who is watching. So because I'm starting to share more and more stuff with you guys. So, as I was doing this weekend and thinking, okay, it has been 4 months of this dorsal vagal thing, and that's just not working for me. I'm tired now. 4 months is way too long to be sitting in that freeze mode. Let's at least get to some fight or flight, at least a little bit, right? And I had a chance to talk to a bunch of people, and this is what happens. I had a chance to talk to some people who gave me, some feedback on some things, and these people who were on my summit who were like, oh my gosh, we need this for our kids. I'm like, that's an idea. I need to think about that because that's not a pivot. That's not a pivot. That's just an addition. Then I had other people when I said, you know what, I'm really loving this radio show. I'm loving the podcast. I'm loving the people that I'm meeting. I'm loving the opportunity to connect and to get a message around and to get a message out and to hear other people's messages and their perspectives. And maybe I just need to step into that deeper, which still feels strange. And I know all y'all I talked to last week said, stop saying that. But it does feel strange. That's just the truth. It just feels strange. But the reality is that is not so much a pivot as it is stepping into that place and purpose that I know I'm here to serve. Mm-hmm. Because just because I never saw it before, or more importantly, blocked it before, doesn't mean it really isn't on the path. Because I got to tell you, as I've told you guys before, when things aren't aligned, it feels really weird. But when you get in alignment, even when something's hard, you have so much peace. You have so much energy. You have so much drive to get it done. And that's what happened when I finally said, you know what, we're just going to do this. We're going to go all in, on the radio show, on the podcast, on these other, doing on demand, doing Clubhouse, doing things that really connect with people, that help people understand that they're not crazy, because we're not crazy, y'all. Organizations and corporations can make you think you are nuts, and you are not. They put those golden handcuffs on you. They make you think you have no choices. And none of that stuff is true. That's head trash, right? That's the old theme that at some point in time, right, they do play on fear. When the economy's bad, when people are losing jobs, they treat people any kind of way because they feel like they don't have a choice. But you do. You always have a choice. Choices have consequences, and some choices are better than others, but you always have a choice. And so sitting in that to say this ability to connect with people, this ability to have people stand back into their power, right? To have people get really clear, because that's what I do, is help people get clear. connect dots that they didn't even know existed in a way that speaks to them, help them move forward. That's where it stands. So when you talk about pivoting, and I've had a lot of people talk to me lately about pivoting, about changing, about completely doing something different. And I say this, in some cases, it is true that you need to make a change a job, change a boss, change a environment, change a city, yes, just change is good. And the only thing constant is change. And along with that, it's important to evaluate what the pain is before you just decide to change. Now, if you are in danger, if it is messing with your psyche, if it really is truly harming your mental wellness, then you need to make a change as quickly as possible to get yourself out of that situation, right? And seek help and ask for assistance in doing that. But if it's just ugly and unwanted and unwarranted and you just don't like it, well, you haven't liked it for a certain period of time, so you can like it, unlike it, or dislike it for a little bit longer while you take the time to evaluate and determine what it is you want to do. So it is much more aligned with your goals and your purpose and your desires, as opposed to just moving just to move. Because we do that a lot. We have this instant gratification thing, right? We want it to be fixed yesterday. We want it to work yesterday. We want it to feel good yesterday. And not everything is able to be done immediately. In fact, most things aren't. Most things take some time. Most things, which, by the way, so I'm going to interrupt my train of thought here because I have a lot of listeners to my podcast and to the radio show from India. I don't know how that happened, but I'm so excited to have them. And India is in a absolute crisis right now. They are calling it apocalyptic. So I just want to send to all of my listeners, to all of the folks that are in India, to folks who are listeners who have family in India or friends in India, just all my thoughts and prayers. You know, I wish I could do more. I wish I already had this, multi-billion-dollar, I wish I was Bill Gates, right? Multi-billion-dollar business so I could just send a ton of vaccines and oxygen and hospital stuff to build. I mean, I wish I could do that. And that is not my ability or capability or within my wheelhouse right now. But what I can do is continue to lift you up and speak about it. So if you have means and you have desire and you have hope and you have, that kind of possibility, we are getting to a good place in the US, but there are places around the world that are still suffering tremendously. And if you can help, please do so. So to my listeners and followers in India, we are with you, and we are believing that we will globally find a way to support. Okay. So back to the point at hand. I just didn't want to leave the show without saying that.
Absolutely.
So this idea of sitting into your purpose, I think what I also found was there can be a lot of fear associated with that, right? That hesitation that we feel, that pain that we feel, sometimes it's just fear or denial, right? So even when I looked at myself, it wasn't so much fear. It was just like surprise and denial. Like, this can't really be where I'm supposed to be going. But remember, my word for this year was surrender. Surrender to the flow. Go listen to the messages, because y'all know God's got to burn a bush for me to get it. Listen to the messages, go where you're supposed to be go where you're supposed to be going, step into your purpose, and wherever that leads and whatever that looks like, just own that and step into that and be okay with that. And so as you are looking at this time, because as we come out of the pandemic and things start opening up again, people are still trying to make decisions around how they want to go back, whether they want to go back, when they want to go back, what that looks like, right? Still having conversations around their jobs, and is this still the job they want to do? Because there are many, many things that came out of this pandemic that were painful. There were also many, many things that came out of this that were a resetting of things that we needed. And one of those was giving many of us much more time than we've ever had in a very, very long time to sit and think, to evaluate, to question, to ponder, right? To really not just sit in the habit of getting up, the habit of commuting, the habit of showing up, the habit of just doing the same job, all those things that we just do because that's what we've always done. The pandemic gave us a chance to sit back and say, why? My favorite question. Why? Why? Why am I doing that? Why am I commuting? Why am I doing a job that I hate? Why am I doing this job that I love, but somehow it's impacting the other things in my life? Why? And when you think about a pivot or purpose, right, instead of just changing just to change, take that time that we've been afforded through this craziness to really ask the deeper questions. Give yourself the grace of the time to ask those deeper questions, and then make a decision on how and where you want to move and what you want that to look like and how you can align it with what your passion is and what your purpose is. And to give yourself the opportunity, when I say evaluate, I truly mean deeply evaluate. Because maybe what you come up with is, you know what? These are things for me that I am truly passionate about. But I don't want these things to be my job. I want them to still be my passion. And so I need to go make sure I'm doing work that funds my passion, but also gives me the kind of freedom that I need to be able to do it and to act in it, right? And that's a very different decision than saying, you know, I want to make sure if I'm getting up every day and I'm having to go to work and I'm having to commute or I'm having to get on Zoom or Google Meets or Teams or whatever, that what I'm doing is purposeful and meaningful and that I'm contributing. And I'm not doing that where I am now, so I'm going to find something else. And everything in between on that broad spectrum. So instead of just taking that pressure to pivot because something's not working, to just change immediately, also take the opportunity during this time to pause, practice the pause. What is it that isn't working? What is it that feels misaligned? What is it that's draining my energy and keeping me from being and acting and feeling the way I want to be, act, and feel? What is it? And only you can answer that, right? And seek assistance. Lean on your village. I mean, talking to these women I talked to over the last few days, and I am so lucky. I am so lucky and so blessed to have a circle of people around me who are just, they are just incredible people. I'm telling you, they are incredible people. They are insightful. They are loving. They are supportive. They are boss babes. They are the most staunch, stalwart, strongest men, kings that you never would have imagined. I am just truly blessed with the people that I've been surrounded with that have come through my life. And yet, even though I know that, I am not often willing or sometimes able, because that's a true statement, willing or able to say, you know what, I need to talk to somebody about this. I need to help. I need help. And not therapy, because y'all know how I feel about therapy. But reaching out to your village to say, you know what, I just need to talk about this. And I did that last week. There were 2 people I talked to last week that I'm like, you know what, I just need a minute. I need a minute. I need to talk through this. I am in a place that is uncomfortable and doesn't feel right. And I'm not seeing it. And one of them said, that's because you can't coach yourself. And of course, my first response, well, why not? I coach everybody else. Why can't I take my own advice? But she's right. It is very difficult to coach yourself. That's not saying you can't have discipline, you can't be consistent and all that kind of stuff. But it's very difficult to coach yourself and to have those conversations with yourself, because again, it's about, as you're talking or if you're just doing it in your mind, you gotta hear it, right? You gotta use all your senses, and that's hard to do when you're also in the middle of the pain or in the middle of the discomfort. And so, reach out to those people who know you and who are concerned about you, who know your vision, and who can be that sounding board and who can help you understand where it is you're supposed to be. One of the people that I talked to last week, who is just doing amazing things, I'm going to have her on my podcast soon. She actually said, I've been hearing that, that you were just kind of off kilter, but I figured you'd reach out. I didn't want to just, say something and just if I was hearing it wrong or, but I was concerned because I thought, well, why isn't she reaching out to me? Because she knows where I am. And it was a very interesting conversation because her perspective was, well, wait, she knows where I am. Has something happened? Is there something else I need to know? My perspective was, I'm not talking about some of this stuff to anybody. So the people that are reaching out to me and asking me, I will tell them when they ask, but I am processing. So I process a lot internally. And when you're looking at a pivot or looking into your purpose, you do have to do a lot of that internal processing, because your vision is not always going to be a vision that everyone else sees, because God didn't give it to them. He gave it to you. But it's also important, as you're doing that processing, that you allow people that you trust and who know you well and who are committed and supportive, let them in to the process that you're feeling, that you're going through, in order for you to determine, do I just need to kind of sit still a minute? Do I need to just dig deeper? Is it really time for a change? Is there something that I'm not seeing? Because when you're in the middle of it, when you're sitting smack dab in the middle of dorsal or sympathetic, right? You can't see that. That's not a place you make decisions. Again, for those of you who are just tuning in, I've talked a lot about the polyvagal theory, and that just became something that has been so meaningful for me. The polyvagal theory, Polyvagal, polyvagal theory. And it talks about, dorsal, which is the freeze mode, and then sympathetic, which is fight or flight. And it's a nervous system response. When we don't feel safe or we feel like something's going to happen, we go into one of these modes, and it's fight, flight, or freeze. But because it's a nervous system response, that is not a place where your brain is actually engaged, right? You can't really think because you're in this physical response. And when you're sitting there, you do not have the ability to have the vision, right? And the ability to think broader and have a circular thinking around the decision you're trying to make. Because you're in that nervous system response mode, right? I gotta fight through, or I just need to be still and just hopefully it passes. So when you kind of pull up out of those and get into ventral, you can really start to discern and make some decisions. And sometimes we need people outside of us that are in our village who can help us get to that place where we can actually think through what we're trying to do. Because it's not always just about a pivot. It's not always just about an immediate change. Sometimes it's just about a little tweak. Or sometimes it's just about sitting still for a minute, regrouping, getting your energy back, and going right back at it. But if we don't give ourselves the time, right, and the space and the gift of looking at all of those things and seeking counsel from those we trust and who know us well and who understand where we're trying to go, we can make those big dramatic shifts that aren't necessarily helpful, meaningful, or directionally correct, just out of pain, right? Just out of needing to do something different, because what's working now is just not working. And so we need to figure out a way to do something different with that so that we're able to really move into the thing that we say we want. And in order to do that, in order to do any of this, clarity is key. Because that's the other thing that came up when I had some people ask me, so what do you do? How do you do what you do? And it hit me that what I really do is help people get clear. Because it's not unkind to be clear. It is not unkind to be clear. That's as a leader, right? Leader being about behavior, not position. That is an individual, as a colleague, right? As a partner, as a spouse, as a parent, as an aunt, uncle, god sister, whatever. It is not unkind to be clear. Clarity helps understanding take place around expectations so that we can be realistic, or at least prepare for what may or may not happen. But if we are not clear, we're just acting out of impulse. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't made some kind of plan, right? I mean, you may have planned, but if you just plan because someone else told you should, or it's the popular thing to do, or everybody's pivoting, so I got to pivot, is that really what you need to do? Are you really clear on why you're pivoting, or what pivot you need to make, or why you're even pivoting, or what your expectations are about the pivot and what it's going to create? Clarity. That's clarity around what you expect. That's clarity around what may or may not happen. That is plan A, B, C, and Z, all of these kind of things, right? I also had one of my mentors tell me, which I never, again, counterintuitive, we cannot coach ourselves, told me something that I thought was really fascinating. So again, type A insecure overachiever. My name is Laurel Rutledge. I'm a type A insecure overachiever, right? And so you plan. And then this really dear friend of mine said, okay, Laurel, but here's what I want you to do, because you're really nervous about kind of the shift that you're making, because I don't call it a pivot, it's really a shift, the shift that you're making. And you're nervous because you don't know if it's going to work. You know, the practical is overshadowing the possibilities, which is a big deal because we all have practical things we got to deal with in our lives. It is really important to understand, she said, because that's the way you're wired. She said, I want you to take the time to go truly flesh out your plan B. I was like, what? Because when you're in plan B, that means you're not really focused on plan A. She said, no, listen to what I'm saying. I want you to go flesh out your plan B. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Who do you network with? What, all of that kind of stuff. She said, write it all down, get it clear, and then you set it aside. She said, because I know you well enough to know that once you do that and you know you are ready for B, you can put it aside and not even think about it, and you can focus on A. And I was like, really? And she was so right. We've really got to know ourselves, clarity, know ourselves, and then seek the guidance of others when we can't see ourselves. Yeah, Leela, yeah, the brainstem where fight, flight, or freeze, faint response resides in the oldest part of the human brain. That's right. 300 million years old in evolution. Yep. And so that's the part that really forms as just beings, right? That fight, flight, freeze, right? Or as you said, faint. That's another one. Just kind of just remove yourself from the situation if at all possible, right? But that whole idea of seeking clarity so that you can move forward in a way that works for you, towards your purpose, towards your goals, whatever that is the key to continuing to be able to have the energy and time, because time is not renewable. So shouldn't you be spending your time on the things that are moving you into your purpose, into your heart's desire, right? Into that thing that you really want to do, as opposed to spending your time fighting a bunch of stuff. I'm just saying. Because we have choices. And the choices aren't necessarily easy. The choices aren't necessarily comfortable, but the choices exist. The choices exist. And it is incumbent upon us to make the choices. It is incumbent upon us to make the choices. And so that clarity piece is really important in determining what are the choices that we have, and then which one we make and why we make it. Because there's no way for any of us to know everything that could possibly happen. It's just not possible. There are so many variables just because we're all human, right? And life is life. There's so many variables. We can plan for as much as we can, you know, as a former risk manager. We can plan for as much as we can. We can mitigate the things that we can mitigate. We can eliminate or avoid the things that we really want to avoid, but we cannot plan for absolutely every possible scenario. So if you've gotten really clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it, then when something unforeseen happens, you can make a determination as to how that impacts your goal and your journey, and then make a decision as to what you're going to do about it. If you can do anything. There's some things that happen that we can do absolutely nothing about. All we can do is respond to them in a way that, you know, protects us and keeps us safe and moves us forward. That's all we can do. We can't fix or manage everything, but we can prep through our own level of clarity to be able to respond to the things that transpire in a way that enables us to have a level of strength and a level of confidence and a level of energy around it, which is the whole point. Because that word pivot, sometimes in my mind, when I listen to people talk about pivoting eliminates control. Because pivot is pressure. Because everyone says you got to pivot. You got to pivot. You got to pivot. If you want to survive during the pandemic, you got to pivot. If you want your business to work during the pandemic, you got to pivot. You got to be on social media, but there's so much noise, you got to pivot. How are you making sure that you're doing something different. You got to pivot, 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 pivot. I think we need to eliminate the word pivot.
I never used the word pivot, but this morning, and I promise you, I heard 4 times, don't worry about pivot. And I'm like, who's worried about pivot? I don't even know half what that meant.
Yeah.
But that's good that you're talking about that. That's why I'm like, how is she coming in talking about pivot? And you're right, because we focus. Let me ask this, Laura, real quick. Okay. You said about not feeling the pressure of pivot, and everybody's got to pivot. I love that you said that, because I've got somebody who's hit me up with a business idea.
Yeah.
And it's so not what I do.
Yeah.
And they were saying, but you need this. This is going to make you some money, and it's so much money in it. And that did not move me.
Right.
Because I think, as you said, many people have gotten desperate in the midst of a pandemic.
Yes.
And started doing other stuff that they don't have passion to do.
Right.
Because of the money.
Yeah.
But when you work your passion, and money is necessary to answer all things, the money will come, because, as you said, you got the speaking engagement that you wanted. In the midst of a pandemic, he will still place you in those places. So what do you say to the people that feel the pressure of, well, how am I going to get this money? How am I going to make this happen? And maybe I need to do this business deal.
Right. So, and that's a really good point. And I speak in answer to that from somebody who that happens to, right? This happens to all of us. When the practicalities begin to overshadow the possibilities. The practicalities of mortgage to pay, kids to feed, clothes to buy, gas to put in the car, or public transportation. Nothing's free, y'all. Even air, sometimes you got to wonder, right? And so those practicalities begin to put more and more pressure on us when we're in positions where we are just building or just growing, or we've lost our job, or we're trying to move, or we see people around us losing their jobs, and we just get fearful that we just got to keep what we need, or we got to get 4, 5, 6 side hustles, because you never know when one's going to go away. And so I first want to say to all of you that's happening, I honor that feeling. That feeling is real. That feeling is based in real practicalities. And I honor that. The other thing I want to say is the story you're telling yourself about those feelings is not true. It's the story that puts us in that fight, flight, freeze, faint mode. Really go back to ensure that the feelings that you're having are aligned with a true story. Go back and evaluate. When I think about when I started this business, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. I'm really giving up. I'm giving up a regular paycheck. Oh my gosh. But I had to go back and say, what is my worst case scenario? If nothing works, if I spend everything, what happens? My worst case scenario is that I have family that I move in with. I'm not going to be on the street. I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to not be able to eat. I still have, education, degrees, and experience and all that. I can find another job. So my worst case scenario is I go back to working for someone else. But I had to go through the process of understanding the worst case scenario. What's the worst that could happen? Because when you go through that process, it helps to calm that freeze mode, that fight or flight mode that says, oh my God, I'm going to die, right? The worst thing that we can imagine is going to happen. So that's the piece about clarity, right? Go back and take the time to really say, what is my worst case scenario? What is the worst thing that can happen? Because that is the true story. Assuming you don't have other kind of things going on, right? Because we all sometimes have other stuff happening in our brains and in our lives that send us to a story that still isn't true. You want to understand that the feelings are real and you should honor the feelings, but make sure that the story you're telling yourself is true. And so when something comes to you and says, you got to do this because there's all this money. You got to do this because there's all this money. Things do require money. That's just real, right? Things require money. That is real. How much money do you really require? And how can you manage your desperation so you don't make a decision in the short term that is going to really harm you in the long term? Because most things that look absolutely phenomenal aren't. Just like, people be saying Bitcoin, 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 get into cryptocurrency. People make a ton of money in cryptocurrency. Okay, that's true. People also lose a ton of money in cryptocurrency. You can put in $100 and the next day that can be 3 million. That has happened to people. But that 3 million could go down to less than $100 in the next 5 minutes. Because markets are emotional, y'all. They're not logical. They're emotional. And so now if you really want to do that, then, and that becomes your job because you're just fascinated by the hunt. You're fascinated by the process. I say, do you, boo. Do it. Just be prepared for what the risk is. So it's the same thing when people come to you really wanting you to do things that are totally ancillary to where your heart is. And I've had a number of those that I've had to just say, you know what? I just don't want to. Mm-hmm. I have an online HR portal that I built for entrepreneurs, for mainly for female entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, who are starting to deal with the HR stuff and didn't know what to do about it. I built it on purpose. I built it because I saw people having conversations, making decisions that were going to cost them a lot of money. And I didn't want them to be in that pain. So that's why I built it. I spent a lot of money and a lot of time. And it's really good. I have sunsetted it. You can't even find it on my website anymore. Why? Because while that stuff is really important and I still don't want anyone in that position to make a mistake just out of ignorance, the amount of energy it takes for me to keep that up because I refuse to put something out there that is not up to date. It just drains my soul to think about what is the current minimum wage? What do we need to do about EEO? How do we need to make sure that you are doing the right compensation policy and what are benefits? To get back in that detail of HR again, I just want to pluck out my eyelashes. And so I had to really sit with that because I have a lot of expertise in HR. A lot of expertise in HR. It is valuable expertise. And it has proven valuable to me. And it's proven valuable to others with whom I've shared it. But it doesn't make my soul sing. It is not necessarily, it is my zone of excellence, but it is not my zone of genius. And so I've recommended this book before. I highly recommend reading the book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And he talks about zone of excellence, zone of genius. And being in that zone of excellence is where you are doing something that you are phenomenal at, but it's not necessarily something you love. Your zone of genius is where you are phenomenal and it really makes your soul sing. You're in so much peace. I'm in so much peace now with some of these things that I've decided I'm not doing that anymore, but here's what I am doing. So much peace, still a lot of work to do. Still got nerves, still just praying, Lord, just cover me, right? But just stepping into it, so much more peaceful. And it's the same thing with people who are getting pressure now. Just do this thing because it'll get the money. Just do this thing because it'll make you money. If you are in pain and you're about to lose your house or you can't put food on the table for your kids, yes, you might need to do something to get you some money very quickly or find a way to get assistance. Absolutely. I am not making light of those dire situations because we all at some point may get into a situation that is truly dire where we have to make an immediate, painful decision to alleviate the bigger pain. And I want to honor that too, because we do what we got to do till we can do what we want to do. Mm-hmm. What's important is that you recognize and are very clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it and for how long you intend to do it and when you can go back to what your real purpose and desire is. Because our habit as humans is we get comfortable fast. We get comfortable fast. That's why it's so hard to make change. Because making change is hard. Fighting voter suppression is hard because if it's not like in our face all the time, then we get comfortable with not having to have the conversations. Right? We get comfortable with the way things operate. So even if they're not quite right, it's like, well, it's not bad enough. Right? So when it's bad enough, we'll make a change. And if your situation is bad enough, you got to make a change so that you can protect yourself and protect your family. That's important, right? Those practicalities are absolutely the forefront above possibilities at that time. Just don't let the possibilities go completely. Because once you alleviate that pain, once you've moved through the process where you are now back safe, get back to your possibilities, get back to your clarity on what your vision is and where you want to go. And don't let that go. Don't let that go because you have put energy and time and effort into determining what that possibility is and what your heart's desire is and what makes your soul sing. And don't let current circumstances keep you from at least going after that. Because we only get this one go around, y'all. We don't get to do this over. We get one go around and time is not renewable. So how are you using your time?
Laura, you were talking about your sponsorship, and when you were talking about you love doing radio, love doing podcasts, and things of that nature, and people that are on here and thinking about the pivot and changing, but you wanted to get more into what you wanted to do. So you recognize and realize, if this is what I want to do, I have to do something to continue to do it.
Absolutely.
There was a friend of mine selling paparazzi, and I would say, you ought to put a theme song on there. Don't just stand up there selling paparazzi. Make it loudly. Yeah. But it was like a side gig for her because she was working another job. But when the pandemic hit, it became the main gig.
Yes.
And sometimes things, do you believe, will force you into taking what you treated as the hobby. Like there was times I gave away a lot of my services.
Yes.
That's not that season this time because it's not a hobby now. This is the main gig. So those people that are looking at it, they may have what they need to survive and to make it and to be successful, but we haven't put all our attention into it.
Absolutely, because sometimes, again, it's that fear mode, right?
Yeah.
I know I believe in it, but is anybody else gonna believe in it? Right? Because there's all this thought, right? People will follow passion, but they won't necessarily pay for passion.
Explain it.
Right? They will follow. So when you're really passionate about something and you're excited and they'll follow that because there's energy. But they won't necessarily pay for it if once they have to actually open their checkbook or pull out their credit card, then they're being more discerning. Right? Now, there are some people who really get over the hump, right? Who are like, they are so big and passionate about stuff. I don't care what you're selling, I'm gonna buy it. I don't care if you're selling me, a bridge in the desert. But I believe in you, so I got you, right? So there is a level of sometimes the people are so charismatic. Not even passionate. They're so charismatic that people will follow them anywhere. We see that in a lot of circumstances, especially in politics. So we see that there's a level of charisma that just brings people when you are saying the message that they want to hear. But the other side of that is, when you master a craft, people pay for mastery. They pay for experience. They pay for what is the return they're going to get, either in how they feel, how they work, what they know, right? It's all about with them, right? What's in it for me? People pay for results. People pay for how it makes them feel. People pay for how it impacts their lives. So they're really excited that you're passionate, and they may listen to you for a while because you're passionate, but there's going to be a point when it's like, okay, but how does your passion translate into something that works for me and helps me? And so we have to listen to that kind of tipping point, right, of where that goes. And the thing to remember, too, is people are always watching. Someone is always watching. Always watching. And for me, this really thinking about radio and because this opened up, and I got something I got to talk to you about, Sherry. Because this opened up, I've had someone that's in my circle who was in radio for life. I was like, oh, I've been promising people I'm going to go back and do a podcast. We just need to do it together. I'm like, okay. Never would have been in the purview for me, right? I'm just doing good to do my little baby podcast and my little baby radio show, right? I'm showing up every day. I'm just trying to, But the minute I stepped into what I know is where I'm supposed to be and stop trying to just negate it, and say it can't be real because I never wanted to be in media. I never wanted to be the person. You know what? And that's real nice, but what does that have to do with the price of tea in China, right? So the minute I stepped into that, things started opening up and people began coming into my circle. Jerry's talked about this before too when we went on the show before. When you step into where you're supposed to be, when you allow yourself to really just let go and step into that purpose, the people you need will come to you. When you let go of all the other stuff, right? I've said this before, you got to let go of the stuff you don't need so you make room for the stuff you do. And when you're holding on so tight to that stuff that doesn't make you feel good, but you know it makes you comfortable, you don't make room for the stuff that you need that takes you to the place of true peace and true achievement. Because there's no room for it. Because you got all kinds of noise and all kinds of other stuff in the way. All kinds of other stuff in the way. And so, hey, Jennifer. And so it is important. It is important. It is critical, not important. It is critical that you give yourself the grace of letting this stuff go that has no place in where you're trying to go forward. because you need to have the room for the other stuff to show up, and to give yourself the grace and the opportunity to allow it to show up, because we are the ones that get in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I said this on my summit, one of the things I talk about is designing your own career, right? Designing your own team. We have so many other people that tell us what we should do because they know us. Well, you got so much, for me, you got so much skill in HR. You're so good at that. Yes, I am. I'm an exceptional HR executive. I am. Took me a long time to say that, but I am. I am extremely good at what I do. And it is a zone of excellence, not a zone of genius. And to the extent that I can help people there, I absolutely will, because I also believe in service. But that is not going to be the main thing that I do, because it doesn't make my soul sing. And that means it also does not deliver as much as being in my zone of genius delivers. And what's coming to me, the people, the opportunities that are coming to me are in the new space, not in the HR space.
There you bet. Shut you.
So I'm just saying, you know, when you're talking about a pivot, or people are telling you to pivot, say, thank you so much, I will consider it. And then you go have your own time with your village to decide if and when it is time for you to make any kind of change. And if it's not, don't. And if it is, do. But get clear about what it is you're changing and why you're changing it and how it's moving you to the space you're trying to be in, so that when things happen, because things are always going to happen, that when things happen, you are still invested and you are prepared to make another modification if need be. You still need to be flexible and adaptable, but don't pivot just because everybody else told you should.
Laura, go back to when you said, because some of us would rather be comfortable, but being comfortable, and if your genius is not being able to be workable in that environment, that could be a deadly thing. You just said something about your genius can't perform in certain environments, so you have to make a difference.
Right. Thank you, Leila. Yeah, it is. You know, we are beings that like to feel safe. We like to feel safe. It's all about safety, right? That's why we wear seatbelts. That's why we, have locks on our doors. That's why we like to feel safe. And so, and there's comfort in that safety. And the idea that when you continue to do something you're good at, there's safety in that. But success and real development is we see this meme all the time. Growth and success and development are at the end of your comfort zone. Growth is painful. Learning is painful. Now, I love to learn, so I shouldn't say it's painful, just like painful. But getting something new, starting all over, being new at something is painful, especially when you're used to being really good at something. When you first start, when I finally pick up my golf clubs again and I can't even hit the ball, that's painful. Growth can be painful, but it is so worth it. It is so worth it. Good morning, Mara. It's so worth it if you are willing to give yourself the gift of getting uncomfortable. Give yourself the gift of getting uncomfortable. Now, you have to be ready, because, you can get uncomfortable, like, oh, that's too much, and you pull back. And that's okay. We all have the evolution, right? This is a space of no judgment, y'all, because I got logs and boulders and all kinds of stuff in my own eye, so I can't judge anybody else. Just know that when you are really pushing, it is not going to be comfortable. It's just not. What you do need to do, though, is be discerning and pay attention. Is this discomfort because I am learning and growing and I'm moving into where I'm supposed to be? Or is this uncomfortable because I don't need to be doing this? And it could be one of those two things. Just like, yes, I'm going after this money. I'm going to do this side gig because somebody said I could really make a lot of money and I really need this, but I don't know. Is this the right thing to do? This doesn't feel right. You know what? That's discomfort that you probably need to re-examine. Because that's not discomfort around learning something new. That's discomfort where your nervous system is saying, ooh, danger, danger.
Yeah.
Something doesn't feel right. You got to honor your own gut. Now, I have met some people who don't have a good gut. It's really weird. It's really, because most people I know have a pretty good gut. And when you meet somebody who really doesn't have a good gut, it's like, wow, I don't even understand how that happened. You got to trust your gut. Yeah. How you spell it? You got to trust your gut. When things really don't sit right in your spirit and your gut feels weird, you got to trust that. You got to step back and say, "Ooh, give me a minute. Give me a minute. Let me think about that a minute." And that was hard for me to learn too, because I was so quick to say, "Okay, sure, I can do that. We can work it out. I can figure it out," and then figure it out later. It's only been recently, probably in the last 5 years or so, that I'm like, wait, let me think about that first. At least from a personal perspective. In business, I was really good about that. I was like, yeah, wait, we're going to examine this first before we make a decision. But personally, I'd be like, sure. Because, I didn't want to disappoint anybody, or I was supposed to be able to, or it was supposed to happen, or all those supposed tos and gottas that can get you in a lot of trouble. But I've really, in the last 3 to 5 years, I've gotten so much better at saying, let me think about that and I'll get back to you. Mm-hmm. And I sleep on it. And if it still makes sense, okay. And if it doesn't, it just doesn't. And I'm just honest with people. I'm like, you know what? I just need to think about this a little bit more. I don't know what my decision is going to be, but I need to ponder this a little bit more. I'm not ready to pull this trigger right now. I had to honor me, because and by doing so, that gave me so much more peace. Because then I wasn't doing something like, why did I do that? Mm-hmm. Why did I do that? So this time when I decided to do it, I'm like, this is why I did it. So even if it doesn't work, I'm like, well, you had good intentions. You know? You thought this was what you got, right? But you didn't. So what are we going to do next? So don't just change. Don't just pivot because somebody else told you you're supposed to. Because there are a lot of people who are doing business in this pandemic the same way they've been doing business and are doing just fine. Yep. There are others who truly have had to change. Restaurants who never delivered have had to start delivering. People who never let anybody work at home have had to let people work at home. So there have been changes that have had to happen because of this pandemic, and we've all had to figure out how to adapt. But there have also been some things that have stayed the same. A few, right? Not just a ton of them, but there are things that have stayed the same. And they've been just fine. Mostly manufacturing. They're still manufacturing stuff. But there are some shifts that are making and that are being made, and we just need to be prepared for those and understand which ones we need to make and why we need to make them. And if we need to make them, right? Like I just heard, what is it? What was, there's a Epicure magazine that is, I think it's Epicurean magazine. It's like a cooking magazine. They are no longer going to put any recipes out that have recipes for beef, using beef, because of the climate impact of the whole beef thing. I'm like, okay, so I'm waiting for the Cattle Association, right, to sue them like they did Oprah, because they're saying no more beef recipes. Mm. But they were talking about how many people have now gone vegan, how many people have, really stopped eating beef, stopped eating meat, in general, and all of these kind of things. And I know we've started gardening, right? It's just been kind of cool to start doing that. So there are some shifts that are making where people are starting to think more seriously, more deeply about the decisions they make, and that's all I'm telling you to do. Make a change if you need to make a change. Make a shift, right? Make a slight adjustment. You don't have to completely pivot just because everybody else is doing it. And then decide what you want the outcome to be and get really clear. Get really clear on why. Get really clear on where. Get really clear on who you are and what you want and what you're willing to do to get there. And then once you're clear, then you can make definitive decisions. Make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Laurel, even when you just started coming here to do the show at the radio station, and you were like, I'm so not radio, blah, blah, blah. And then when I asked you about it, I'm like, but I know God told me not to talk about you. Because I'm like, girl, no, she didn't. And when whoever
because I just said, let me think about it.
Yeah, I'm like, think about it, girl, please. But whoever talked to you, and then you were like, okay, this is good. A pivot is so simple because it could just be looking at it from a different perspective.
Yes.
As I'm watching you stand to do your show, I love that because I like to stand and do my show. I think it just gives you more authority and control of your show. But when you think about it, we talked about TED Talks, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff. And before, and I got this book by T.D. Jakes. I don't know if you read it yet, but it's Don't Drop the Mic. It's a very good book.
I saw you talk about that.
I thought about you when I got it, though. You need to read it. It's a very good book, but it talks about the platform and the power of your influence.
Yes.
And how you see what you're doing. You're standing in front of your banner. You're standing up. Yeah. Some people sit down, but you're taking command because you know that there is more for your genius. Yeah. This is good, but there's even greater for your genius. So I think a lot of people just need to pivot how they see things in their
Yes.
mind, because I was getting a burnout until I started recognizing this is the historic KCOH
Yes.
station,
Yes.
and it'll change your whole atmosphere. You
Right.
don't have to change your career. You have to change the way you look at it.
Change your perspective.
Yeah.
Change your circumstances. That's why I call my shows the Rutledge Perspective.
I love it.
Change your perspective, change your circumstances. I had to change my perspective on being visible, because being visible is not about me. Being visible is about being in service. Because how can I serve if nobody knows who I am?
But you can't tell that you did not want to do that, because I told you before you got here, to be in front of the camera this long,
yes,
and be the main one talking, that's not easy.
No.
Because you really have to have your stuff together, know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and do what you're going to do. See, I told you, me and you different. I don't do all the research. But people would assume that it's easy, but saying that you didn't do it before, you had to really change your perspective.
Yes, I have.
And walk into your greatness. And
I have, and have to be prepared, right? I'm always prepared. I got to be prepared, but I really feel like a whole different level of preparation is necessary, because I can't show up here not on my game for you guys. I really can't. So
well, Sharon says this is excellent. This is very good stuff. So
thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. Thank y'all for showing up. We're a little bit past time again. I can't help it. Y'all are just so amazing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody on my StreamYard, and Mara and Leela and Jennifer and Renee. Thank y'all so much. I know there's some more people out there. I just can't see y'all's names. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who was on Jerry's Facebook page. Thank you to all of my listeners. I just so appreciate that you have choices and that you make a choice to spend your time with me. And my goal is that it is not time wasted, that you get something out of it, that it does something to change your perspective for the better. So thank you for joining. I will see you next week. I will be posting some stuff. Like I said, if you have a desire to sponsor, just send me a DM through my Laurel Rutledge page. It's at the Rutledge Perspective on Facebook. That's the page, or you can DM me through Instagram as well, and I'll send you a little package if you are interested and want to be a sponsor of the show. Thank you again to Ethos Consulting. Thank you, Jared P. Beasley.
Thank you.
And KCOH TV Radio, The Boost. We'll see you next week. Bye.